Call this meeting of the Salem Housing Authority for October 13, 2014 to order. If the recorder would please call the roll.
Commissioner Tessler? Present. Commissioner Nanke? Here. Commissioner Clausen? Here. Commissioner Dickey? Here. Commissioner Rogers? Here. Commissioner Benars? Here. Commissioner Clem? Here. Commissioner Hine? Absent. And Chair Bennett?
Here. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have no one signed up for public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to address the Housing Authority? Ron? No? Okay. Commissioner Nanke, the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the consent calendar as provided.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Were there any comments, questions, anything? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Fair market rents referenced in the voucher payment standards for the calendar year went down, and our rates are actually going up. And so I talked with Director Wilt a little bit ago just to get into description of why that is so.
Would you like to share with us?
Absolutely, I would. Fair market rents is a calculation, fairly complex calculation that HUD manages, and the housing authorities really aren't involved in that at all. And it uses data from selected cities on an ongoing basis and then kind of weights that data. And it's a very convoluted process. But what fair market rents do is they influence the payment standards that Salem Housing Authority would have to make available. So our payment standards have to be between 90% and 110% of those fair market rents. And so the real influences on the payment standard are the individuals and the clients that we're serving. So our client's income is on average about $12,500 for a voucher client, which is about half of the poverty level in Salem. So very poor population. We're serving increasingly poorer population. We also have to assess whether or not more than 40% of our clients, voucher clients, are paying more than 30% of their income. And so they are across all of the categories, and that's in your information as well. And finally, there are larger units, 3-bedroom on the margin, but 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom units that our voucher clients try to find in the marketplace and can't find them because they're too expensive and our payment standards are not high enough. So that's why we're recommending the payment standard increases, is to free up more units in the marketplace that are in a quality condition that we can actually allow our clients to rent there, as well as hopefully free up some additional income for our clients to pay a little bit more for their housing while we pay a little bit more as well.
Okay. Any further questions? No? So the rents went up.
Fair market rents are kind of flat. The rents, well, the rents in the city have gone up in certain areas, yes, but the reality is it's really the lower income of our clients that's driving our need to pay more of their rent.
Okay. Everyone's on board. Okay.
Costs go up, so you have to get a
Keep
raise.
raising the rent. I know that one. Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. 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 All opposed? Motion passes. There is no further business before the Housing Authority, so we are adjourned.
like to call to order this evening's meeting for the Salem City Council for September 22nd, 2014. Would the recorder please call the roll?
Board Member Bennett,
Here.
Board Member Tesler, Board Member Nanke,
Here.
Board Member Clausen, Board Member Dickey, Board Member Rogers, Board Member Benars, Board Member Clem, and Chair Peterson.
Here. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. And we'll start with our approval of additions and deletions to the agenda. Counselor, I apologize. I started us on the wrong meeting. We're on the urban renewal meeting. All right, we'll start again. This is this evening's meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency for October 13, 2014. And we'll call the roll for that, please.
Board Member Bennett,
Here.
Board Member Tesler,
Present.
Board Member Nanke,
Here.
Board Member Clausen,
Here.
Board Member Dickey,
Here.
Board Member Rogers,
Here.
Board Member Benars,
Here.
Board Member Clem, and Chair Peterson.
Here, thank you. Reports of boards, commissions, and committees. I don't believe we have any this evening, so we'll go direct to public comment. And I don't see anyone signed up. Was there anyone who was in the chambers this evening that wanted to speak during public comment for the Urban Renewal Agency? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. Member Bennett, do you have a motion?
Madam Mayor, if I may, I'd like to do additions, deletions, and revisions. If you-
All right,
Okay, Madam Mayor, I move additions, deletions, and revisions to the agenda.
Second.
it's been moved by Member Bennett and seconded by Member Benars to approve additions, deletions, and additions to the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I move the consent calendar.
thank you. Is there a second? It's been moved by Member Bennett and seconded by Member Benars to move this, to adopt the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. There are one information report in our binder this evening has to do with the Urban Renewal Agency's Finance Committee meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments regarding that? All right, seeing none, and we have no special orders of business or unfinished business. Is this for me? This is the new business. All right, I'm sorry. All right. And do we have a staff report for this?
No, I think it's a board member addition.
Is this a motion? Thank you. Member Dickey.
Yes, thank you. I move that staff proceed with preparing a strategic action plan within the Portland Road corridor defined by the Union Pacific Railroad tracks on the west, Hyacinth Street on the north, the eastern edge of the North Gateway Urban Renewal Area boundary on the east, and the Union Pacific Railroad overcrossing and Silverton Road on the south, as depicted on the map that you should have received with this. The strategic action plan should evaluate and include the following: summarize existing conditions and prior plans and studies, develop and implement an outreach strategy, market analysis and opportunities needs analysis, gather information on livability issues identified by property owners, businesses, and residents through the public outreach process on issues such as safety, connectivity, visual appearance, and types of business desired to inform the evaluation elements below. Industrial, commercial, and professional business opportunities and constraints analysis, identify opportunity sites, possible partners, and catalytic development concepts, prioritize transportation infrastructure projects, recommend financial incentives and other creative funding to encourage redevelopment and partnerships, final action plan recommendation, and report.
Thank you. It's been moved by Member Dickey and seconded by Member Benars to move the motion, to adopt the motion as presented. Is there discussion? Member Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. As you recall, we discussed this extensively at our work session with the Urban Renewal Agency Board, or with the North Gateway Urban Renewal Board a few weeks ago. And this is something we've actually been discussing for nearly a year now. And we got some pretty clear direction and heard pretty clearly the commitment to at least seeing what we need to do on Portland Road, what opportunities exist, what barriers exist, what can we do to get this thing moving. It's been sitting for upwards of 20 years, and this is something that we need to take a look at. I think one thing that I'm really interested in seeing is that out of this, once we get this analysis done, that we don't get a cookie cutter plan that says, you know, here's what we can do. But I hope that we get some really creative thinking, out of the box thinking, to see what is it we can do with our limited resources. We haven't quite ever been able to hit that $26 million we need, but I would love to see what sort of interesting creative projects could come out of this. I was kind of struck, I've been thinking now for the last 3 weeks, or whenever we had our work session, about Member Tesler had talked about the SoDo district in Seattle, and I've been there. I've been thinking about, this is an area that's retail, it's industrial, it's commercial, it's all of these things. I mean, if you want to walk from, you know, down the block to go get a cup of coffee, you're walking by manufacturing facilities, you're walking, but they've somehow managed to make it work. And I don't necessarily think that Portland Road needs to look like that, but I think that that's a great example of how they've been able to take an area that's got so many different uses and make it seem to work and be a vital, thriving area. So anyway, I think it's time for us to get moving on this, because we really can't define what all those projects are till we know what the needs are. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity to do it. And I am very looking forward to getting the results back, as well as I know that there's been, West Salem did something, downtown has done things, and I know that our counselors from those areas could probably speak to that more, but I know that this isn't the first time this has been done, so there is wisdom out there that could lend some experience to that as well.
Thank you. Is there further comment or questions? Yes, Member Nanke and then Member Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm at a disadvantage since I was out of state during said work session. Do we have that on video?
Yes, we have it on video and
Excellent.
tape.
And then did staff assist in the creation of this motion as well?
Yes.
Is that staff's desire to actually be able to create a strategic plan? And then
Well,
would that come back? Because this actually has, the strategic plan should evaluate it, and it sounds like it's just going to happen, and then the results of that would come back in. So I'm kind of lost.
We did budget for this type of study in the budget, and so we've been talking about doing it, and maybe even last year as well. We've been talking about doing this study for some time, but there was some need to have more conversation with the North Gateway Advisory Board, and that's been going on for several months between the URA board and the advisory board. And then we had the meeting a couple of weeks ago with the advisory board. So we're prepared, staff is prepared to go forward. It was in our work plan, it's in our budget, and so if the Urban Renewal Agency Board feels like this is the right time, we can go ahead and scope this and along these lines and set a time frame and begin to move forward.
Excellent. But would it actually be creating a plan, bringing it back to us to look at the plan before we started going out and doing stuff then?
Yes, and Mr. Rux, do you want to add?
Doug Rux, Assistant Director, Urban Development. What was in your motion kind of outlined the higher level steps that would be involved in this. I would envision there would be a lot of dialogue with property owners, businesses, and residents in North Gateway, with the North Gateway Advisory Board, and as well as the agency board as we go through this, and so we can share information with you and get that feedback that will ultimately lead to a final strategy that you would then adopt somewhere down the road. But there will be those checkpoints as we go through the process.
Okay.
All right, Councillor Clausen, and then Councillor Benars, then Bennett, and then Clem. All right, everybody gets a chance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it shows that we're all interested in this, that's for sure. One question for staff, I guess it might be for Mr. Rux. What kind of time frame are we looking at on making this happen and coming back to council or the board?
When we originally put this and talked about it in the budget, we were probably looking at it was going to be this fiscal year. I would say it's going to take us probably 6 months to 9-10 months to go through this process. I think the public outreach piece is going to take a lot of effort to get a lot of that dialogue. So if I would put it out there, probably 9 months.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe, I don't know if it would be the maker of the motion, but is the intent to modify the existing project plan or further define what those projects are or kind of identify specific projects within that? Because I know that was part of the discussion we'd had with the advisory board was, you know, do we make a major shift? Do we refine it? Do we kick it back to the board? Or kind of how does that look? And I was just curious, is it looking at trying to change things or more kind of refine and define?
So this actually gives us an analysis to see, are we headed in the right direction? Do we need to do something different? So I guess it would help answer all of your questions. Are there projects that need to be changed? Do they need to be scaled back? Do they need to be added to? So this gives us something to start from. The original plan's about 20 years old, and it was kind of worked on for a number of years. And so there's a number of things in there that are very outdated that we need to know, does this still apply to this area? So it could be all of the above. Could be existing projects. It could be new or different projects.
Okay, and one last follow-up, if I may. I'm maybe seeing a little bit of analogy, maybe with the Downtown Advisory Board and the strategic plan for downtown, this moving forward that way, and I'm not real clearly in the motion, but I'm assuming the downtown or the Urban Renewal Advisory Board would be very much hand in hand with staff on this one, so that they're seeing this and feedback and involved with all that. Is that correct?
We've talked with the North Gateway Advisory Board. We've talked about having monthly meetings to go through this process and have that dialogue. So yes, they will be intimately involved as we go through.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Benars?
Thank you. So I know that you've mentioned this as an action plan versus another study. My involvement in the West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board has been, we had numerous studies and we were very tired of gathering just information and not actually having a plan. When I look at the active words in each of your bullet points, I look like summarize, outreach, market analysis, gathering information. I warn very much that when you come out, there's at the very end you have action plan, but there are certain specific bullets that you go after in this. Yes, gathering information is important, but coming to a conclusion and putting that information into an action plan so something gets done is the most important thing. West Salem is yet on another action plan. Now we're looking at the corner of Edgewater and Wallace Road, and I think it's a tune of greater than $250,000 for that study. That money that's going towards a study comes away from the potential of doing projects, and so I just warn that you glean the information you can, or staff already knows this because they're intimately involved with both DAB, Downtown Advisory Board, and WestRab, that you ask for those chairs to come to the Northgate Redevelopment Advisory Board to tell them their experience. These other two groups have already come up with a plan. They've already been down that pipeline. They have some great experience that needs to be shared. So you're not coming into this just gathering information. You're coming into this with the goal of making sure you have specific things to act on. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Member Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How much is budgeted for this plan, do you recall?
What was approved in the budget was $200,000.
Okay. And I really support this. I think what's probably the most important thing that we're saying in here is we are focusing on the Portland Road corridor. That's what is defined here. This isn't headed off anywhere other than where the initial plan of 20 years ago is, but things have changed dramatically out there. And I think just one example is we have a major new high school going to be going in out there, and we have no plan. as to what our role's going to be, and we're going to have a role in this at some point in terms of infrastructure. As well as, I think, just what I heard, I attended the last NGRAB meeting as well as the work session, was just sort of a sense of kind of frustration, and that's what this will resolve. This starts getting us, I think, Councilor Bernard's on toward an action plan. We begin doing projects, we begin defining projects. So I think this is a really important first step. And without this, you can't take a second step. Until you do this part of it, you don't know where you're going, and it's really hard to just take it on piece by piece and kind of as a free-for-all. This gets us in a direction. I think it'll really help NGRAB and the neighborhood, as well as us as the agency, to get this kind of clarified sort of direction that we really need to get going on this thing. 20 years is long enough for us to wait on Portland Road, I think.
Member Clem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to second comments that have been made previously. Two thoughts. There should come a list of projects out of this, because if it doesn't, it's not an action plan. So I thoroughly expect, even next year when I'm watching all of you, that there will be a list of projects, because that's really what an action plan is. Number two, the outreach and the involvement with the advisory board is absolutely wonderful, but it, like other studies, goes nowhere if, in fact, commercial development considerations of each part of those properties in that stretch of Portland Road are not brought into advisement. For example, property X may just need improved water sewer service. It may need a driveway. The building, in a lot of cases, in some cases, the building should just come down. And so I hope that there will be an engagement with the property owner and commercial developers to what's realistic, because we can, again, come up with all the action plans in the world, and if the market is thinking completely different, it's another study. And so I appreciate the involvement with the advisory boards, but quite frankly, I see the focus should be with commercial development and with the property owners in terms of what the action plan projects ought to be.
I appreciate everyone's comments regarding this. I do think it's a very important step that needs to be taken. It's high time. It's valuable property. It's a valuable gateway to the city, as well as it's an important heart of a neighborhood, really, and also of an economic area. So I'm very supportive of this. What I would like to see is some sort of a report back to council on sort of an itemization or breakdown of the cost, because I know the first thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to start getting some emails or phone calls from, very correctly so, from people asking, gee, $200,000, that's a lot of money. Why does it take so much? So I would like us to have a better description about that. And then in the end, I would like this to be really a call to the commercial developers and the businesses and the private investors that, hey, the city of Salem is really serious about having something positively planned and brought forth and constructed in this part of town. It's really high time, and this is a city that's interested in public-private partnerships. So I hope this also spurs those kinds of conversations out in the community as well. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we have no other new business for the Urban Renewal Agency, and we are adjourned. All right, I'll now call to order this evening's meeting of the Salem City Council for October 13, 2014. And would the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Bennett?
Here.
Counselor Tessler? Present. Counselor Nanki? Here. Counselor Clausen? Here. Counselor Dickey? Here. Counselor Rogers? Here. Counselor Benars? Here. Counselor Clem? Here. And Mayor Peterson?
Here, thank you. All right, I will now ask for a motion for approval or additions and deletions to the agenda. Counselor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move additions, deletions, and revisions to the council agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Counselor Bennett and seconded by Counselor Benars to adopt the additions, deletions, and revisions to the agenda. Are there any questions or discussion? Counselor Nanki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I was surprised to see this jump on this afternoon at 3:30. We have a council rule that any councilor's items have to be in the Wednesday prior so that they come out with the standard agenda.
Would you like to, let's let our city attorney speak to that on the timing of this motion.
My understanding is that it was submitted to staff. I don't know the exact details of that, but it was the councilor was in discussions with staff on this motion last week. So I'm not sure why it wasn't included into the agenda, but
Yeah, because otherwise it would be a motion to waive council rule at the councilor item section of the agenda rather than just adding it on at the front.
Just excuse me for just a moment.
No, that's budget committee stuff. This is
I believe Counselor Clem had his hand up.
Yes, in defense of this addition, I remember seeing the agenda Wednesday night. So my original thought was, and I was considering sending in a motion, it may not have made it into that Wednesday night original agenda. So if we need to waive council rules to consider this item, I would move to do so.
Is there a second to do that? Second. It's been moved and seconded to waive council rules so that we might add this councilor motion to the agenda. Is that what you were saying? Yes, all right. Any discussion, further discussion for that? Counselor Dickey.
I do just want to state I sent the motion in to staff on Tuesday of last week. So I'm not sure where it went from there, and there was some discussion among staff, but it was in plenty of time.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. Then we still need the motion, the vote on the motion for the additions, deletions, and revisions, which is on the floor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's see. We are down to 1.2, Council and City Manager comment. Are there comments from Council? Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank you for coming to the Northeast Neighbors meeting last week to help them celebrate their 40th anniversary as a neighborhood group and share your proclamation with them. Really appreciated having you come out for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed being there, and I am so excited anytime I see a neighborhood association as active as that and as engaged, and thinking about the heritage of 40 years was a nice experience, a great turnout for the meeting, too. Thank you. Other councilor comments? Councilor Benars.
Thank you. Last weekend was a busy weekend for me and for so many people in the Salem community. On Saturday night, the Salem Multicultural Institute put on the Salem Multicultural Ball down at the Reed Opera House, well attended. It was well peppered with dances from different countries, or native dances from different countries, and a lot of nationalities that show up. And it's a wonderful way to show the multinational portions of the city of Salem that we're not all so privy to, I think. There are a lot of different nationalities here. And then on Sunday afternoon, the next day, was the annual Chef's Night Out held down at the Convention Center. It was a sold-out crowd this year with 650 tickets. Well worth it. Lots of food, lots of wine, all donated by the different chefs and the restaurants, all in support of Marion Polk Food Share. So that was another shining success. I suspect that they're going to expand that next year so that they can sell even more than 650 tickets.
All right. Any further councilor comments? City manager comment, I believe we have.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you all know, Kathy Hall left as our city recorder, and Amy Johnson has been filling in very ably since she's been gone. We do have our new recorder, who this is her first day here. And Amber, if you'd like to stand up, this is Amber Matheson. And she's joining the city today as our city recorder. So we'd like to welcome her, and you'll be seeing much more of her.
Yay. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us. We hope you enjoy these meetings as much as we do.
Some more than others.
All right, it's now time for public comment. I see we do have someone signed up. David Concanon has signed up to speak. Mr. Concanon, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes. At the end of 2 minutes, the amber light comes on, and at the end of 3 minutes, the red light.
Yes, thank you. My name is David Concanon. Currently, I reside at 2010 Lowen Street Northwest in Salem with my son and his family. I was here a couple of months ago and spoke, and I remember that light coming on and scaring me.
Don't let it scare you.
I came tonight because while I was out of town, I did look at the videos of the council meetings, and I want to thank you for having those, Madam Mayor, council persons. Those are fantastic. But I found myself concerned about the medical marijuana initiatives, and I felt like perhaps you don't know anybody who's a patient of medical marijuana. I'm 70 years old. I have 9 children, 25 grandchildren, 22 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. Counting our spouses, my wife and I had 85 people in our family. I lost her last October. And because of the pain that I suffer, and the fact that I have stage 4 kidney disease, and I have a liver that's pretty well damaged from 40 years of alcoholism, I can't take regular pain medications. I have severe back pain, neck pain, and hip pain from an automobile accident I had 20 years ago. And I would just like you to know that medical marijuana patients aren't druggies. We don't need to be watched like druggies. I have 8 other prescriptions that I get filled at Walmart. Nobody cares about those. Please, don't worry about us patients. We could be your neighbors. We could be people you work with. We could be family members. I could be some of your dad. I could be other one's great-grandfather, not great-grandfather, but grandfather. And I just ask that you remember, we are patients. We do need the medical marijuana that we get. And please don't treat us like criminals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Are there any questions for Mr. Concanon? All right, thank you for coming down. We appreciate that. All right. Now I'll move to the consent calendar. Councilor Bennett, do you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars to move the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. We now move to public hearings, and our first public hearing will be introduced by a staff, I believe. Welcome.
Mayor, this is Ryan Zink from our budget office.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Ryan Zink. I'm the franchise administrator with the City of Salem. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share with you this proposal regarding solid waste collection rates. This evening's public hearing is conducted in accordance with Salem Revised Code, Chapter 47, also known as the city's Solid Waste Management Code, which provides that the City Council is responsible for establishing rates and may do so by service or zone. There are 2 zones within Salem, Marion County and Polk County. Authority is also granted by Oregon Revised Statutes 459 and 459A, and these statutes grant local governments primary responsibility for planning solid waste management, issuing franchises, and setting rates for solid waste collection services. There are 2 recommendations included in the staff report and in tonight's presentation. While the approval of these 2 recommendations are related, they are separate decisions to be made by City Council, and if approved, would go into effect this coming January. The first is a proposal from staff to increase the solid waste franchise fee from 5% to 7% of gross receipts collected by franchised haulers. The second, which is dependent on the decision made regarding the franchise fee, is a proposal from staff to increase solid waste collection rates. While the franchise fee is listed first in the staff report due to the order of business required to facilitate these recommendations, I'll be speaking to you this evening about the proposed rate increase first, followed by the franchise fee adjustment. In order to reflect the greatest potential impact on subscribers of these services, the citizens here in Salem, I've included the impact of an increased franchise fee within the rate proposal I'm showing you tonight. The Solid Waste Management Code establishes the criteria used in making a decision of whether proposed rates are just, reasonable, and adequate. The primary objective of the rate review process is to establish rates that balance the cost of services to the customer and allow the city's 6 franchise haulers a sufficient operating margin to sustain operations in the city. One such measure of determining whether the balance is achieved is return on revenue. Return on revenue is a calculation that essentially reflects a pre-tax margin of profit. Factors including current and projected revenues, expenses, and equipment costs are used to calculate a reasonable operating margin. Many jurisdictions that franchise their solid waste operations use return on revenue as an instrument for adjusting rates. As an example, both Beaverton and Gresham have even codified a targeted return on revenue for solid waste providers. Historically, the City of Salem has set rates to allow solid waste providers a return on revenue between 8 and 12%, consistent with the return targeted by other jurisdictions. In July of 2014, Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling, the association representing Salem's 6 franchised haulers, approached the city with a rate increase proposal and provided documentation to substantiate the requested increase. Following this request, the city contacted Chris Bell and Associates to lead a review of financial statements and cost of service analysis. The city has engaged the services of Mr. Bell for several rate reviews, and he is one of the few experts in Oregon and Washington when it comes to matters of solid waste management and rate modeling. To summarize all the details involved in the cost of service analysis, here are the 3 main steps. First, reported revenues and expenses are reviewed to be sure that they appear to be accurate in relation to the number of customers served, number and size of bins collected, and predicted tonnage of waste disposed. Second, once revenues and expenses are determined to be reasonable, they are plugged into a model which accounts for future growth and inflationary cost drivers. Finally, a projected return on revenue is calculated and the proposed rate adjustments are evaluated to see whether or not they're necessary. This slide right here demonstrates the results of that analysis, showing the return on revenue last year, the projected returns for 2014 and 2015. As I noted earlier, The City of Salem is split into 2 zones for the purpose of solid waste collection rate setting, Marion County and Polk County. The return on revenue for Salem's haulers within the 2 zones are broken out separately on this slide because there are some notable differences in the return on revenue due to variations in rates and cost drivers such as tipping fees and transportation costs. Without the proposed increases, the combined return on revenue will likely fall below the 8 to 12% range historically targeted by the rate setting process. And that's what you see on the bottom left at 7.25%. And the return for franchisees serving Polk County could drop under 5% by 2015, which you see at 4.38. This slide shows the proposed rate increases, including the impact of the franchise fee, as I mentioned before, for roll cart, receptacle, and drop box rental services. The full list of services is provided in Attachment A of the staff report. Some of the other fees not listed in this slide do not significantly impact the rate of return. However, haulers have demonstrated that the new rates proposed for these services are in line with what a provider of similar service may charge. Proposed increases to roll cart services will impact nearly all residents, including some multifamily units and many commercial businesses. If approved, the rates for cart services would increase by approximately 6.2% in Marion County and 10.2% in Polk County. Commercial receptacle services, which are the big metal dumpsters used by many businesses, would increase approximately 2.2% in Marion County and 4% in Polk County. And finally, the drop box rentals, receptacles with intermittent collection and disposal, are proposed to increase 80 cents from $8.50 to $9.30 daily and from $85 to $92.90 monthly. The material cost drivers between the proposed increases are related to current and projected costs for personnel, fuel, and inflation. The proposed increases to Polk County is greater than Marion County, partly because the haulers serving Polk County are generating a lesser return on lower rates, and Polk County haulers transport the solid waste longer distances. While the return on revenue for each of these lines of service vary, the proposed rate increases are projected to provide a 10% overall rate of return in 2015 for the franchised haulers. This slide shows in the yellow lines there the impact of the impact of the proposed increases to the subscribers of the cart services. The majority, which you see in the yellow lines, are for subscribers of the 35-gallon service. This table lists the increase of a subscriber to these services would see on their garbage bill, which is sent out every other month. As these figures represent 2 months of service, a subscriber of the 35-gallon service in Marion County would see an increase of $16.20 annually, or about $1.35 per month. Meanwhile, subscribers to the same service in Polk County would see an increase of $22.80 annually, or about $1.90 per month. As you can see, even with the larger increase, Polk County residents would continue to pay less for the service. I'd like to point out that this is only the 3rd general rate increase brought forward to City Council since 1996 that does not pertain to a new fee or service. In comparing general inflation to the increase in rate over the past 12 years, you can see that the rate increases in both zones are less than inflation. And this has primarily been the result of stable tipping fees, customer growth, and the efficiencies in the waste collection system. This brings us to the second topic of tonight's presentation, increasing the solid waste franchise fee from 5% to 7% of gross receipts collected by franchise haulers. Franchise fees are the second largest source of income for the general fund, supporting services such as police, fire, parks, and the library. They are paid by the providers of water and sewer, electric, natural gas, cable TV, telecommunications, and solid waste collection services within the City of Salem. State and federal statutes limit the amount of franchise fees that can be collected from providers of most of these services, and for those utilities, the city collects the maximum amount allowed by law. However, cities in Oregon have the ability to determine the franchise fee for solid waste collections. For Salem, that fee is currently set at 5%, and has been at this level since 1991, when it was increased from 3% to the current 5%. In March of 2012, the League of Oregon Cities published the Utility and Franchise Fee Survey. Table 7 of this survey lists solid waste franchise fees for 108 Oregon cities. You find that as attachment B in the staff report. 10 of those respondents reported franchise fees greater than 5%. 3 cities in Polk County, including Dallas, Independence, and Monmouth, are all at 7%. And the 2 highest reported cities were Astoria at 10% and Cannon Beach at 20.11%. Solid waste franchise fees for Salem's comparable cities range from 2.5% to 8.4%, including Eugene with a commercial franchise fee of 6%, Medford at 8.4% for both commercial and residential, and Springfield at 7%. As many of you know, property taxes alone do not even cover the general fund cost of providing police and fire services in Salem. The city relies heavily on other available revenue sources to provide these and other essential services. Additionally, the city is limited in its ability to generate additional revenue. This is why staff is making the recommendation to increase the solid waste franchise fee from 5% to 7%. The city currently receives approximately $1.1 million in franchise fees from solid waste haulers. This adjustment would provide approximately $400,000 of additional general fund revenue. If this increase is approved, City Council has the authority to apply the additional revenue to any city programs and services, including, as recommended by staff, transferring the additional revenue to the Transportation Services Division for street maintenance. It is important to note that the additional funds would not fill the $6 million gap projected in the general fund over the next 5 years, nor would it be sufficient to sustain current levels of service in the Transportation Division, for which, without additional resources, about $500,000 in cuts are anticipated next year. This additional funding could fill about 80% of the projected fiscal year 15-16 funding gap in the Transportation Division. The city has historically used garbage franchise fees for transportation-related expenses. Currently, about $115,000 of franchise fee revenue is specifically allocated to maintaining alleys. Oh. I forgot to do the slide. One more. This slide shows the effect the franchise fee increase would have on the majority of residents in Salem. Over 90% of residential customers in Salem subscribe to either a 35-gallon or 65-gallon roll cart service, with the majority subscribing to 35 gallons, like I mentioned earlier. Based on the proposed rates for 35-gallon cart service, 90 cents of the bi-monthly bill in Marion County and 80 cents of a bi-monthly bill in Polk County would be due to the increase of the franchise fee. This slide shows the same rates I showed earlier, but with the effect of the franchise fee increase broken out. As an example, the bottom line in yellow, the $3.80 bi-monthly rate increase for a 35-gallon roll cart service in Polk County is the sum of a $3 general rate increase and the 80 cents attributed to the franchise fee increase. This slide shows the effect the franchise fee increase would have on the most commonly subscribed commercial services in Salem. The bi-monthly charge for the 95-gallon roll cart commercial service would increase $1.50 in Marion County and $1.40 in Polk County. The bi-monthly charge for the 2-yard receptacle service would increase $4.80 and $3.70 in Marion County and Polk County, respectively. So, how do the proposed Salem rates compare to other jurisdictions? As this chart indicates, the proposed rates put Salem solidly in the middle of the range in relation to comparable jurisdictions. As you can see, Polk County is in blue and Marion County is in the green. The 2 bars for each zone represents the residential rate for a 35-gallon roll cart with and without the 2% increase to the franchise fee. In conclusion, having performed the required analysis using the criteria identified in the solid waste management ordinance, staff finds the rates proposed to be just, reasonable, and adequate. Therefore, staff recommends that City Council conduct first reading of Ordinance Bill Number 24-14 on October 27, 2014, which amends SRC 47.097 to increase the solid waste franchise fee from 5% to 7% of the gross receipts collected each year by franchise haulers from operations in the provision of solid waste management, and direct staff to bring back Resolution Number 2014-69, which increases solid waste collection rates identified in Attachment A for adoption on November 17, 2014. If adopted by the City Council, these rates would go into effect January 1, 2015, and subscribers would receive a 30-day notice of the rate change from their local hauler. This concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions following the public testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your very complete report. We will now look to see who has signed up. All right, we have 2 people at this point who signed up to testify, and Estelle Harlan and then Tim Roca.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm Estelle Harlan, Solid Waste Management Consultant for your franchisees. I want to begin this testimony tonight by giving you a bit of information about the process that we went through to provide the accurate data on which our rate request is based. This data was originated by the haulers. They prepared what is called a cost of service analysis form, or a COSA, and that included actual financial, operational, and customer data for 2013. I reviewed this data for reasonableness and accuracy of revenue, tons, truck hours, and other relevant areas of operation. Then this reviewed data was sent to Dan Porth, CPA, who reviewed each company's spreadsheet and looked for the integrity of the formulas, and then combined it into a composite that gave a citywide view of profitability. The composite data for 2013 and pro forma 2014 and 15 then was sent to the city for its review and analysis, and based upon the separate analysis of the city and the franchisees, we determined the revenue need for the operating margins, reasonable operating margins. And I would want you to note that we calculated this need before taxes. So this is a before tax operating margin. Therefore, believing that the rate process has great integrity and accuracy, the franchisees do request that the rates that have been stated in the staff report and in the rate schedule that's included in your packet be granted effective January 1. Attachment D in your packet is a rate comparison summary that I prepared based on gathering information from jurisdictions all over the state. And it supports this rate adjustment proposal. It indicates that rates will remain very reasonable in the city if carts, containers, and drop box fees are increased. So in summary, the franchisees have followed the city's required format in collecting and submitting their COSA to the city. That data has been tested and analyzed for reasonableness by both the franchisees and the city, and it has determined the rates that are needed to be charged to customers. We want to state that we understand that the city has a right to increase franchise fees, and we have no opposition to that. We just need for those fees to be passed on to our customers. And so the rate schedule does have both with the current level and with the new level. And we would ask that you make a determination on the appropriate franchise fee, and then that you approve the corresponding rates that go with that fee, and it be granted effective January 1, 2015. The executive director of the Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling Association is here tonight, Todd Irvine, and Dan Porth, the CPA, and if you have questions of any of us, we'd be glad to answer.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. I think we have some questions. I see Councillor Bennett and then Councillor Benars.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the testimony. I am curious, where do recyclables go to be separated? Where, when they're picked up, where are they transported and separated?
They're taken to the MRF and separated. Do you want to answer that more specifically, Todd, about the process?
Yes, for the record, my name is Todd Irvine. I'm the general manager for the Mid-Valley Garbage and Recycling Association. And yes, we process a couple different things. We have the source-separated curbside recyclables. That comes back typically to the MRF, and then it's transloaded into larger trailers and then shipped to a secondary processor that would process that material.
Where is that process?
We've utilized a couple different processors over time. Garten Services. We've also used Far West Fibers and a company called SP Recycling as well.
Where are they?
They are all within the Portland metro area.
Are they? I'm just going to mention this as part of the discussion so you can know that there is at least some concern. With Garten doing expansion and going more deeply into recovery of recycled materials here in Salem, will you be looking, do you think there'll be a closer look at them? They've received a community development block grant to improve. There's a bunch of things going on out there, and I know we're real interested. This is in that urban renewal area you heard about earlier, so there's a lot of interest in how things are going with Garten. And
Yes, absolutely. We definitely have discussions on a regular basis. Matter of fact, Tim Rochak will be at our haulers meeting tomorrow as well. We have a monthly haulers meeting. So,
well, we'll do know there's interest, at least from this councilor's perspective, in this.
Thank you very much. And we have appreciated the relationship and have supported Garten over the years, and again, it's been a great relationship as well.
Well, we want to keep as much in Salem as we can. So.
I understand.
Thank you.
All right, are there other questions? I think Councillor Benars had a question.
I had a question I run into is, if there were not an increase in the franchise fees from 5 to 7%, how would that affect the rates that the garbage haulers would request to have? Would you have to increase the rates to the
But it would
customers?
be, it'd be 2 percentage points less. So it's just strictly an add-on of whatever. We still need the rate in adjustment.
Regardless of that, you want
Yes.
a rate increase, and I think.
Yes, he had a good example of the difference between the. Ryan, did you want to?
So it goes from, I think it was 6.4% increase to a 4.4%.
Yes, that's correct. So as you see up here, for instance, on the, I'll point this way. In the yellow line for instance, Marion County, the increase would only be $1.80 without the franchise fee increase. Marion County, the franchise fee adds another 90 cents for every 2-month billing cycle.
Okay, thank you. I'll save other questions for staff.
Okay, I have a comment that I'd like to, a couple questions to, that I'd like to direct to Ms. Harlan, and that has to do with the recycling and the recyclables and where they go. I share Councillor Bennett's concern about the fact that Garten Services has been a long time and very responsible and reputable recycler and divider and packager and distributor for recyclables from this community. I think the community has really grown to favor recycling in large part because of what Garten Foundation and Garten, now called Garten Services, has been able to communicate to the public about that. And I would also like to remind the garbage haulers and your association of the tremendously important work that's done at Garten Services by people with disabilities. And that is a tremendously important value to this community. And I would hope that you would hold that as part of the balance as you're deciding which companies to take the recyclables to.
We concur with you, and we're in conversation with them, and as Todd indicated, they'll be at the meeting tomorrow to discuss this more.
I think that makes a big difference in this community when garbage rates go up and recycling rates go up. I think people can sort of add that in mentally and know that they're supporting a business that truly does enhance the quality of life for many people with disabilities in this community.
We completely concur.
Hope you think about that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the chance to say that. Thanks. Okay, Tim Rochek from Garden Services is our next person to testify. Good evening.
Good evening.
Didn't mean to steal your thunder. I was looking over here and I didn't see you over there, so welcome.
Thank you. For the record, my name's Tim Rochek. I'm the CEO of Garden Services. Our office is at 500 Hawthorne Street here in Salem. And thank you for the kind comments and the questions from the counselors as well as the mayor. We really appreciate that. One of the things that keeps the cost of garbage service down is recycling. Knowing this, the City of Salem recently invested approximately $250,000 of community development block grant funds to increase the efficiency and capacity of our recycling processing facility in North Salem, and we really appreciate that. Most people realize that putting fewer things in the garbage keeps costs down for households and businesses. That's one way that recycling keeps garbage costs down. And most people also realize that extending the life of landfills helps keep the overall cost of the solid waste system down. What many people don't realize, however, is that Garton and other recycling companies purchase collected recyclables from the garbage companies. Our long-term partnership with the Marion County Haulers has helped us provide jobs for 160 people, most of whom have disabilities. We process approximately 1 million pounds a week of recyclables through our Salem facility. In the last few years, tight margins and increased competition has resulted in more recyclables leaving our county to be processed in the Portland area. I hope any potential rate increase would make it possible for more material to be processed locally, keeping the jobs in Salem. I and our company, I'm sure, would wholeheartedly support a rate increase that would be paired with a requirement that Salem's recycling be processed locally. That would allow us to take our recycling from our curb and have it turn into jobs for local people with and without disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from counselors? All right. Thank you very much. All right. We'll ask staff to come back. I think there may be some questions for staff. Councillor Clem and then Councillor Benars.
Thank you. Ryan, good presentation. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're voting on, or that we're moving to first reading, I guess. And that is that two decisions in terms of moving the city's franchise fee more comparable to other jurisdictions, and then allowing rate increases at a future vote to be within comparable other haulers. But there's nothing in this that requires that we drive or direct exactly who gets the garbage hauler's business. Is there in any of what's in front of us?
No.
Okay, because costs have a lot to play with that. So I hardly endorse the encouragement that Garton be employed, but we are not steering through anything here, are we?
This recommendation does not include anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Benars.
I just wanted to make several things here clear. First off, it's the confusion a little bit on the report, because your report in staff report here puts the franchise fee increase first, and then goes on to what happens to the garbage rates, as opposed to what you presented up here. It's the opposite. My point being is I'm looking for a reason for a 2% increase in the franchise fee. I've heard a lot about we can collect this money, we can put it potentially to some good use, such as streets, but I haven't heard anything from you about exactly why. Is this all about driving revenue? Is that the only thing the city has the ability to increase from 5 to 7%, collect the extra 2% and throw it at the general budget? Is that the only reason?
I'm going to refer to Deputy City Manager.
In essence, as was mentioned in his presentation, the city has a limited availability of potential increases to revenue. And as we looked at what jurisdictions in Polk County, such as Salem is, and what they were charging and what they've recently done with their franchise fees, we analyzed that and started to look at, with the needs that we have in the general fund, 5-year forecast, a projected deficit of $6 million over the next 5 years, and our transportation fund looking at $500,000 in cuts this year. This was one area where we felt that an increase would still allow us to be comparable with our neighbors, at least in Polk County, and generate a small amount of revenue to start to address a minor portion of those cuts that are going to have to be made.
Well, one of the things that I struggle with is as soon as we collect these funds, this $400,000, and it goes into the general fund, the potential as it's sold to us on the council is it can go to transportation projects. Yet there's nothing that earmarks this, dedicates this fund towards transportation. Once it goes into the general budget, it goes into the giant hole that's missing, what, some $9 million or $11 million that we'll be looking for in cuts this year?
That would be Councilor Bernard's, City Council's policy direction as we go through the budget. And you may recall that we're going to have a City Council budget policy session on October 23rd and again on November 12th. And so every year, the City Council has the opportunity to determine where general fund revenue is directed. And so you'd have the opportunity then
But we'll
to
collect
make that decision.
collect the fee on an annual basis and just hope the next council appropriates it towards transportation
You
potential.
can't, no city council can obligate future city councils, so that's the way the process works.
I
is during the
understand
budget
that. I'm
process.
just saying that it's at the whim of the particular council. That's my point.
Yeah.
It may not stay there. It may go to something else down the road. And I just want to make sure that we're not collecting fees just because, well, we have the ability to put our fingers in somebody's wallet because we're collecting a franchise fee. I understand that the garbage haulers definitely need to have the ability to cover what their expenses. They have a right to make the money. The 4%, I'm questioning that extra 2% increase.
We've had, I would say for 2 or 3 years now in our budget process, the council direction that we try to look at revenue opportunities within existing revenue because there are so few new revenue opportunities, and we have been talking for several years, as you know, about the concern about funding for transportation programs, as well as for general fund services. You know, we've had to cut services over time, and so I feel like this is consistent with what our request has been from City Council over time. But as we get to those opportunities, it's up to Council to decide whether to move forward.
I heard that not only do we have more, the reason we've been able to keep this fairly flat on increases is because we have more consumers using the service, ergo that we were getting more income from that. And now we're also increasing the franchise fee. Both those things are going in favor of the city, more users and a higher rate for those users. And I'm looking out for dollars. I'm looking out for dollars in the community. Not everybody can afford, as small as it is, 90 cents or $2.40 or whatever it is on any particular container that they're taking up there. But it's still money, and it's still $400,000. You know, I'd love to see it go to transportation. I just know that it's not going to stay that way, and it's at the whim of politics. So I don't want it to be sold. That's the way the staff report is written. It's sold as, well, this is a nice source for transportation. Well, yeah, it is if we do go through the budgetary process and we accept it as that. But
Right.
that can change from minute to minute. Thank you.
Councilor Benars, I just have to make a comment. I really take offense when you begin to describe public policy that's set by this council or a future council as something that happens at the whim. Every single person on council sits as a member of the budget committee, and those decisions made by the budget committee are made with clear thought, careful research, and careful collaborative decision making. Thank you. Now, who next had a comment? I believe Councilor Clem and then Councilor Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand the recommendation. That is that we advance it to first reading. And so we're not passing anything tonight. We're simply moving it to first reading, and then as far as rate increases, directing staff to come up with something to bring back to us. So if the public has comment about us raising this by 90 cents, there's time to hear from the public, because the paper, I'm sure, will cover it again as well.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, there are a number of things that could be decided. One of those, so the rate that we would bring back in in November is dependent on the franchise fee as
Okay.
well. So if council decides not to increase the franchise fee, we would bring back a different rate schedule that does not include that increase.
Okay, and as a representative of the people where we've got a close fire station, we laid off police officers and downtown security folks, I think that's a whole, I appreciate Councilor Bednar's bringing it up in terms of it's a budget decision, but we aren't making that decision tonight. We have other opportunities to look at that. So I would hope that we would proceed with this.
If I could just mention, it would be invaluable to have a decision at least on the rates with whatever franchise fee is included by the 17th of November in order to allow the haulers to provide the required notification to their customers and have the rates go into effect by the 1st of January.
Councillor Clausen, followed by Councillor Tessler, and then Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, I was just curious on the 5 to 7% franchise fee. Was that in front of the franchise or the finance committee? Did that go to the finance committee? Okay.
Yes. Yes, it
I'm
did.
seeing nods.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
As part of this. Okay. The other question being, are these two issues inextricably linked? I kind of feel like I'm a little confused, and I'm wondering if members of the public might be confused as well. In that, it looks to me like the staff recommendation on this is saying that an affirmative vote of staff recommendation would increase the franchise fee and approve the first reading of the other for public hearing at a future date for second reading following. Am I correct on that? And it just seems a little bit convoluted, and could these be split up for separate decisions?
Well, they essentially are separate decisions. We're asking you to take them in order here because the rate increase, I should say the franchise fee increase is tied into the rate increase. So if you're not going to do the franchise fee increase, we need to readjust the rate that you're adopting through the ordinance. So we kind of need a decision on both issues now so we can make changes as necessary to the ordinance.
Feels fast, I guess, for somebody who's not a full member of the budget or the finance committee to have this come forward and say we need this now so we can do this.
I will say that this was given out as a future report on October 3rd.
Okay. But it wasn't on the floor.
That's right.
So, okay, I just need to think about it.
I believe Councillor Tessler is next, followed by Rogers, and then Nanki.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I have a couple of things I wanted to say to staff and the garbage haulers. The first thing is that I've been really, really happy with the service that I received from the garbage haulers. I once watched the garbage container slip out of the little thing that picks it up on the truck, which was an unfortunate deal. And the guy actually got out of his truck and picked up all the garbage and put it back into the thing and then dumped the garbage. I appreciate that. Thank you, garbage hauler. I appreciate that. And then the other thing is, this may sound kind of petty, but I'm going to mention this because it kind of is a problem. There's some places around Salem where there's only a bike lane and there's not a sidewalk. It's really kind of dangerous to put those garbage cans and recycling things in the bike lane. And so if we can work on figuring out how we can get the garbage and the recycling out without impeding those bike lanes, that would be good. Pringle Road especially is very dangerous when there's things in the bike lane because there's no sidewalk, and so it forces you out into traffic. And it's very, very busy there. And I'm sure there's other places too. And I know we've had this situation in the past and it was resolved in Chuck's ward, but I'm just bringing that up. It's just something to think about and be careful about. But otherwise than that, I've been completely happy with the recycling service and with the garbage service, and I find the drivers to be polite and courteous. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. One is the franchise fees of the other utilities. It seems like with the garbage haulers, we set the number basically where we want to go. But what about the other utilities? Are we limited on how high we can raise their franchise fees?
Yes, for most of all the rest of the utilities that I mentioned, that limit is set by either statute or federal statutes.
And garbage hauler is the only one that's not?
I believe garbage hauler, or the solid waste franchise fee, and then also a water sewer franchise fee are the two that we can set.
And what's the water sewer franchise?
That's at 5%.
Okay. And my second question is, how much, if we have no franchise fee increase, and we have a rate increase, and we still get 5%, so what's the increase to the city at that level? If we don't do the 2% increase, we would have an increase to the general fund. What would that number be?
That number would be equal to the increase in the rate, which
I get that, but we're saying at 2% is $400,000, so.
Sure.
Well, I'm just curious what that number is going to be.
I don't have an overall conglomerate rate of what that increase would be due to just the rate, but as an example, we'd be looking at about a 4% increase.
Maybe you could just provide it later.
So,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
sure.
My point is there is still an increase. So.
Yeah.
Counselor, with the increase of approximately 4% on the overall rates, we're collecting $1.1 million in franchise fees, so a rough estimate would be about $44,000.
Thanks.
Is that it? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to address the couple of the questions in regards to the Finance Committee. We did discuss this embedded in the solid waste rates as well, so it wasn't brought to a separate. We've met many times in the past on potentials for alternative revenue. I would have preferred to have this come as a separate item because we had all the haulers there, so didn't want to necessarily get into a great big conversation just about franchise fees, because this is a direct pass on, and then it also included the recommendation to put that into transportation services, again, which 3 of us here on council were part of the water sewer franchise fee that was dedicated to that, and has all been stripped out now as well. So. It came to the Finance Committee not necessarily in the way I'd have liked to dealt with it as a standalone measure, because it is standalone compared to the rates, and it does get 100% passed on to the user. So I can't see where the franchise hauler would have that big of an issue, except for they'll hear their customers complaining because the money just moves through them. But it is a direct pass on to the consumer.
All right, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Clem to move the staff recommendation. Is there discussion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just...
Oh, I'm sorry, we are still in the public hearing.
I'm ready to go. Let's close that public hearing.
Yes, you are ready to go.
Me too.
All right.
I've heard that now.
It is now time to close the public hearing. Now.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Yes, thank you. Moved by Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Clem. Thank you. To move staff recommendation. Discussion.
Madam Mayor, we'll have an opportunity in the future to discuss these in some detail. I would remind councilors who are concerned about this, Councilor Bernards, I just remind you of your $1 million request for transportation. Here's nearly half of it. You made the request. Here's the answer. I think that it's important that we remember. I mean, in my ward, it's sidewalks, it's street slurry. These are very important issues, and I think we'll all be working very hard on this. But I'll tell you, we're not closing another fire station in my ward in order to take care of the comfort level of councilors worried about transportation. We're not going to shut the library down for another day a week. And those are the kinds of issues, as you've been on the council, you know this, that we face in the budget process. But looking forward, we're not facing a $9 or $11 million shortfall, nothing like that. We should be in really good shape to head into this and put money into transportation as you requested, if the money's there, and that's what this is about, I think. It's a real opportunity to have these heavy trucks share a little bit more in the maintenance of our streets. And I think there's a real nexus here. It makes sense to me, so I'm ready to kind of move ahead with this thing.
Councillor Clem and then Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank the Finance Committee for vetting a lot through this before it even got here. And it was presented as two items because one does depend on the other, according to the city attorney. So I would not have wanted to have visited them separately, even though they're two separate decisions, because then it would have been untoward to say that we're allowing rate haulers an increase when, in fact, the city is asking for more money to continue the general operations of the city. I think it's a straightforward way of dealing with our franchisors, and also with the public. So if folks have got comments about what we're voting on tonight, certainly invite them to share them with council before final votes are taken in November.
Thank you. Councillor Dickey, followed by Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Mayor. I just also want to take an opportunity to second and third the comments about Garten Services and an opportunity that we have to keep these jobs local. If you've not had the opportunity to tour their recycling facility, it is phenomenal. You will be amazed at what they can recycle. You will go home and start thinking about everything you've recently thrown away that you could have recycled. So they really do a good job, and they do employ a lot of people that might not otherwise be able to be employed in our community. So really just encourage, if at all possible, to be looking at how we can keep that recycling local. I think that's really important, and I also concur that our haulers do a great job. I think before I got on council, I believe the haulers were one of the first groups that I met with, and we've had a great relationship with them, and I really appreciate all they do in our community. Salem does a great job with their trash. I think we do a better job than other communities to our north that are much larger, and we do excel in that area. So I hope we can continue to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Going back to Finance Committee piece, I would have liked to had the 2% franchise fee increase up first, so that then we could have talked about it. And I know that the way it came forward was an opportunity that I don't think staff was necessarily aware of that much before the meeting. That being said, in regards to transportation funding, is that locked into our recommendation from this public hearing? That's just a suggestion, correct?
It is a suggestion. That would be a decision that City Council would need to make.
Right. Because there is concern there. I mean, it's like throwing it out for a carrot. I know that people have been complaining about, our essentially lack of funding in the transportation area. I'm looking very forward to pre-budgeting meetings so we can provide some direction on that before it's in a packaged document that comes to the Budget Committee, and it really restricts our ability to modify the numbers and rebalance them somehow all over. So I will support this. It is one of the most direct avenues that's out there. There's no increase in separate billing systems through another. So again, I just would have liked to have seen it as a standalone beforehand.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment.
Councillor Benars.
So at the conclusion of last year's, gosh, it was this year, actually, in this year, that we voted on the budget, I did make a motion that very last evening to ask that we set aside $1 million on an annual basis for street maintenance, as we were setting aside nothing at this moment other than funds that are used to repair emergency repairs to streets. But there's nothing going to slurry coating, and that's why I made that motion. What I mentioned in reference to when the $400,000 goes from this fee into the general budget, I will be looking forward to, when we start here very shortly on the budgetary process for next year, a conversation. That $400 disappears into the dust. I meant no offense politically, speaking about politics, but it meant no offense at all about anything other than to say it's just a matter of policy making. And I would like to see at some point that I'd like to see at least $400,000 towards street maintenance. That's really where I was aiming with the whole thing in the first place. There's nothing that prevents that money from going and keeping the library open, or another police officer on the street, or a fire station open, as opposed to going towards streets. So, I struggle with this one as well. I see where the need is. I know there's a need. I just also know that it's not a dedicated fund, and it will never be a dedicated fund. It's all based on policy, and that's just the frustration that I'll have. And I'll work on it this coming year, in the next 6-8 months, as we work through the budgetary process, to make sure that there are funds in earmarked for street improvements, street maintenance. Not necessarily improvements, but just maintaining that huge asset that we have out there.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Are we ready? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries with one abstention. I'm sorry, with one negative vote, and that is Councillor Benars. Thank you. We're going to take a brief recess before our next public hearing, which will begin in about 5 minutes. All right, we're back in order, and we have a second public hearing. And I believe that we have a staff report to start with. Welcome. Yes. And does the recorder please first introduce the public hearing?
The City Council will now hold a public hearing to receive testimony on the fiscal year 2013-2014 Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan Annual Performance Report, which includes the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Programs.
Thank you. And our staff is?
I'm Rena Peck, Urban Development Federal Programs Manager. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council members. Before you tonight is the 2013-2014 Consolidated Annual Performance Report, Evaluation Report. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires that the city report on the performance of the projects and programs that received Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership dollars during the 2013-2014 program year. The Consolidated Annual Performance Report identifies the CDBG and the Home Investment Partnership performance of those projects and programs as a result of the Council adopted 2013-2014 Annual Action Plan. The intent of the CDBG and home funds is to meet the needs of the individuals and families earning 80% or less of the median family income for Salem and Kaiser. These needs were met by addressing homelessness, economic and community development, and affordable housing options. This year, the total CDBG and home funds expended was approximately $2.5 million. In 2009, the city adopted the 2009-2014 5-year Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan. The Consolidated Plan identifies the funding goals and priorities for the next 5-year cycle. The 5-year goals and the 2013-2014 annual accomplishments are as follows. Goal 1 was ending homelessness. The proposed number of clients to serve were 2,554. The actual accomplishment was 3,128 clients. Goal number 2 was to promote economic development. The proposed number to serve were 67 clients. The actual accomplishment was 56 clients. But the overall 5-year goal, we exceeded it by 3%, so we had 103 clients that we served over the 5 years. Goal number 3 was affordable housing. The proposed number of clients or households was 422. The actual accomplishment was 222, but we had some projects that were not completed, so they just carried over into this next year, so we haven't been able to count those clients yet. But we are at the goal for the 5 years. The citizens of Salem and Kaiser have been given the opportunity to comment on these accomplishments, and as of today, no comments were received. However, if after this evening staff does receive comments from the public, we'll make sure that you get a copy of those comments as well as staff's response. So staff recommends that the City Council approve the submittal of the 2013 and the 2014 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report to HUD by October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone to testify this evening for this
10 or 15?
hearing? Looks like we do. Thank you. All right. I see TJ Putnam is signed up for this. Thank you. Welcome. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Honored to be here as well. My name is TJ Buttman at 1055 Edgewater Street. I'm the director of Salem Interfaith Hospitality Network. We're an emergency shelter for homeless families with children. Goal 1 outlined in the consolidated plan was end homelessness. I'm honored to be the director of an organization that benefited from this city, but also could move the faith community to make a difference in the lives of families. We served about 40 families last year, and every family who finished our program left for a home. We were able to utilize over 30 churches and 1,500 volunteers, along with money from the City of Salem, CDBG, to come alongside families. So our shelter program, we have a day center in West Salem where families meet with a case manager that was funded through the city, where we can provide that intensive case management to come alongside a family going through one of the hardest times in their life. The loss of a home is a tragedy for anybody. It's especially devastating for families. In January, our area did a point-in-time homeless count, and there were over 800 children that were homeless. I'm passing around a book of the difference of the lives that you make in the kids, and I just thank you guys. I know it's not always glamorous, the work that you do, but you're dramatically changing lives by supporting social services, Salem Interfaith, through the work that you do. We like the city, and it's an honor to be able to say that the city is one of our best partners through this, through home funding that we've had for our building that we got in 2009 to the annual support that we get for case management. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your testimony. We so appreciate the work that you do. I've had a chance sometimes firsthand to see what you're doing, and believe me, it's an honor and a privilege to be in a city where organizations like yours care about people who are really in transition and sometimes stumbling along the way a little bit, and you've proved that with the right support services around, people can really step up and step on with their lives. So thank you so much. I think Councilor Tester, did you have your hand up?
That's right, thank you. One of the things I want to do is I want to become more involved with your program when I leave here, so you need to call me. And the other thing is, and he has my number if you need it.
Do you want to say it out loud, or just checking?
I actually knew a family that was involved in this program, and they told me a really sad story that was basically like when you're homeless and you go to the homeless shelter, they split you up because they can only take men at UGM, and the other place they take women and kids. So if you're a family, they will split your family apart, and you can't stay together as a family. And that's really disturbing when you have little kids and they're used to everybody being, and people were in just dire conditions, living in their van in the winter. And it was really to know that they could go somewhere and stay together as a family. I mean, you have nothing else but your family when you're homeless. That's all you have. You have nothing else. And that means so much to be able to stay together. And you can't do that in a homeless shelter sometimes. And so I really appreciate what you guys do. I mean, from the, and it's just an amazing community of different faiths and religions and all kinds of different people just kind of pulling together and making it happen. And it's just amazing to see. So thank you so much. It makes such a huge, huge difference.
Just to speak on that for a quick second. Families get split up, and we want to keep them together. We're working on keeping the four-legged family members a part of the family as well. So we're partnering with PetSmart to make that happen, to whether it be a little dog kennel in the back or dog run, something along those lines. It's hard on families. Last year, the YWCA closed their Salem Outreach Shelter, and Salvation Army stopped serving families in their shelter program. There were weeks where I was turning away 17 families at a time. They could be split up and go to Union Gospel Mission, and the youth go to the youth shelter. that sad reality is hard on anybody, and we're still struggling with that. When the weather turned and the school year started, we were turning away that many families again. So that shelter, that emergency, that last step, I think I wish I could do more, and I'm working on it, but our community needs that help as well. And I think the consolidated plan and what you guys are doing through CDBG is on the right track, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Other
you.
questions or comments from counselors? All right, thank you very much. All right, at this point, oh yes, Counselor Tesler.
I might suggest a better acronym than CAPER, but you know, if that's what you need to use, that's what you need to use. But CAPER seems odd for the acronym for your report. But anyway.
Kind of makes you hungry.
Are there any questions of staff before we close this public hearing? Counselor Clem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rena, good report.
Thank you.
I couldn't see in the report, though, a chart that helps me understand where we are halfway in this 10-year plan. Just says it exceeded it. So is there a simple thing that maybe you could send me later so I could see how much progress we are making? And then how many homeless folks were at the last homeless count? What was the number?
So the format changed is why that table is not in there. We now are required to submit a report electronically, and so HUD has a particular prescribed way. But I will get you a chart that has all of that information on it.
Yeah, we're halfway.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, well, actually, in the spring, we'll be coming before you with the next 5-year plan. So we're actually at the end of our current consolidated plan. So I'll get you a chart that shows every year how close we've come and where we're at the end of the 5 years.
Okay.
Is that what you'd like?
That'd be great.
Yeah. And I think the homeless count, correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, but I think it was like around 1,500. I don't know, was that about right? Do you remember? Was it 1,800?
1,800. And then
Yeah.
there's 800 kids in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
count, right?
Yeah.
Well, we still have a long way to go.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
And that's only the ones that they could document.
All right, any further questions or comments? All right, we'll close this hearing. And Counselor Bennett, do you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Bennett and seconded by Counselor Tesler to move the staff recommendation. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now, we have no special orders of business. I wanted to draw your attention to the information report, item G. I wonder, maybe our city manager, could you just speak for a moment about the holiday season security services?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch you.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just switching to that report. We are putting some additional security into the garages during weekends, starting with Black Friday and through into early January, so that people feel very comfortable using their garages and know that there'll be people there looking at them. And not that we've had problems, but it's just an additional benefit that we'd like to add. When the group from downtown came to City Council, they talked about the garages and security in the garages and lighting and that sort of thing. And so this is just another effort to make sure that downtown is busy during the holiday season.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. All right. We now proceed to ordinances, to first readings. Yes, Counselor Nanki.
Just
Sorry.
one of the information items.
Yes.
If I can go back, I was actually just reading because we were minus page 12 on item 7E regarding a partition on Ratcliffe. And that was handed out, I think, to everyone prior to the start of the meeting. And then also, I don't know.
Is that what this is?
Yes.
Oh,
Mayor, can I speak to that?
yes.
Okay, so there was a missing page from the decision that was issued. So this, you're not able to add that in at this point, since this isn't your decision, this is the
Okay.
planning administrative decision. So I've talked to staff about it, and we feel it's okay to go out as a final decision with these pages missing. Just wanted you to be aware of it.
What
So
about the error in the partition number?
The conditions of approval, I believe, was the issue. And the conditions in the actual decision are all in the decision. There's just a findings issue that was omitted from those missing pages.
But the findings in order, which is page 3 of 21 electronically, has the wrong partition plat number on it?
One of the pages of the staff report said 1407, but the notice of decision, so the first page says 1408. That's the
Okay.
correct number.
And that,
Lisa Anderson,
we're all
of the Urban
happy?
Planning Administration.
It's not a critical
okay.
error.
Yeah, I was actually rather interested in this one, and thank you for getting page 12 in, because I know the Neighborhood Association didn't put any comments in it, because they said it meets all the criteria, but they didn't like it. Which isn't necessarily going to any merits, but I would like to talk to staff on some of the issues in regard to that, because I would prefer neighborhoods to make comment even if they don't, because then as we go forward, we can look at how we need to change the regulations to address things that people don't like in code. So that's all I have to say on that.
All right, was there anything else under information reports that councilors had any questions or comments on? All right, thank you. Then we will proceed to first reading of the ordinance 8.1A.
Ordinance Bill Number 2114, vacating public rights-of-way located between Mission Street Southeast, Church Street Southeast, Winter Street Southeast, and Pringle Parkway.
Thank you. Councilor Bennett, do you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I move we advance ordinance bill number 21-14 to second reading for enactment.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Benars to move the ordinance bill number 2114 to second reading. Is there any discussion? Call for the motion. Call for the question, sorry. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And on our second item under first readings, I believe, oh yes, the recorder, please introduce that.
Ordinance Bill Number 2514, establishing a tax on the sale of marijuana, medical marijuana, and marijuana-infused products in the city of Salem, and creating new provisions in the Salem Revised Code.
Thank you. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to engross ordinance bill number 25-14 to restrict the proposed tax to only the sale of recreational marijuana and not medical marijuana, and as engrossed, conduct first reading and hold a public hearing on the proposed ordinance on October 27th.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Bennett and seconded by Councilor Dickey. Is there discussion? Councilor
Okay.
Bennett?
I think the motion speaks for itself. It removes the medical marijuana from any discussion of taxation. It
Okay,
just doesn't
thank you.
fit.
Councilor Clem.
Question, does the intent of your motion allow taxation of marijuana-infused products still?
If they're not,
If it's not for medical, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I want the medical out.
Okay, got it.
This taxation
All right.
question. And this doesn't pass the tax, or, I
Right.
want to make that real clear. This does not approve a tax. It doesn't set a rate. It just keeps the door open on recreational marijuana for potential taxation.
Okay, Councilor Nanke and then Councilor Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Dickey first, please. No? All right, Councilor Nanke.
I'd like to thank the maker of the engrossment. That sounds bad. The mayor from Forest Grove, actually, at the League of Oregon Cities Conference last week when we were talking, they actually held their public hearing on the front end, and they were swarmed by the medical marijuana community during that, and they elected to actually remove that portion as well from any taxation. So taxes where taxes are due.
Councilor Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope my question applies, but how would we differentiate medical marijuana? I get it, but and dispensaries sell it. So will they be selling, if what do you call it, recreational marijuana, would a clinic be selling that also?
Well, I don't know, because we haven't seen how this is all going to play out if and when
Okay. I guess
it becomes recreational, but the medical marijuana is essentially defined by, it's purchased by a user with a card that says they are eligible to purchase medical marijuana in whatever form is allowed in the jurisdiction. That can't be taxed. That would be the idea.
I get it. So it would be
Okay.
it would be on the seller or the dispensary to track that then and record it.
If they're
for tax
selling
purposes.
recreational marijuana, they would need to set up a separate track.
Okay, that's all I was asking.
Yeah, does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, were there further questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Motion was made by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Dickey. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to second readings. I believe, Councillor Bennett, do you have a motion on 8.2A?
I do, Madam Mayor. I do. I move to amend proposed SRC 31.085 sub B sub 3 sub C to add the following definition of public park. Quote, all parkland designated in the Salem Parks Master Plan that is open to the public, and then proceed to second reading.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Clem. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, this is a chance, broadly, I think the members of the council need to understand, to do a final run at this ordinance before it goes to second reading. So if you have changes, my change is there are parcels that would be identified in the Parks Master Plan, essentially creating them as parks, but they're surrounded by barbed wire and no trespassing signs. And I don't think that that is the kind of park or public area where the public can go that we were thinking of when we set up limitations relative to parks, distances from parks. I have a very specific one in mind. It's at the mouth of Mill Creek. It would show up, if you were to have everything that could be labeled park, it would show up, but it is no trespassing. There is no reason for that to affect the location of a dispensary under what I think is our intention in the ordinance. So that's my motion.
All right.
Just to engross private.
I want to engross this into it, yeah. That's my motion. Did I say that?
One motion, which moves it through second reading as well? Or
Moves it to second reading, and we'll vote on it as second reading, right?
This is second reading.
And then grow.
This is second reading, so.
If you vote for my amendment,
Is that
we're going to
with-
vote on my amendment or your amendment, and then we're going to vote on second reading. And I'm going to ask you to vote for my amendment and vote on second reading.
Your motion encompasses both of them, so if your motion
better
fails,
hurry.
then it'll be a,
All the better. All right, it was moved by Councillor Bennett and seconded by Councillor Clem to amend the motion, and that is the question on the, and to move the second reading.
Well, do approve
No,
second
and to
reading.
take a vote for second reading. So do we do a roll call
Move to second.
vote?
yes.
All right. Okay. All right, Councillor Clausen and then Councillor Dickey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was a good motion, and the one question I have is, does this apply then to undeveloped parks, or what? The intent is not to have that encompass an undeveloped, only ones that are not happening.
If I could answer that, Counselor. As stated now, any land that's designated as parks in the Park System Master Plan would be included in the calculation. So the amendment to that would say that if there's a land that's designated as a park, but where the public are excluded, it wouldn't be counted. So there's going to be a few of them out there. Apparently there's this one off of Mill Creek. There may be others. I'm not aware of any others, but the intent was to keep a separation requirement between public parks and dispensaries. Obviously, if the parkland is closed to the public, then that wouldn't be one of the parks we would use.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dickey.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a question for staff and a motion to amend, so I'm not sure which I should do first because they're completely unrelated. Let me ask my
All right.
question first.
Okay.
It says in this ordinance we've been given the fee would not exceed $2,000. Is there a process by which we further adjust that fee? Could someone explain, City Manager?
Yes, well, actually, I'm going to ask the city attorney.
So the ordinance establishes that the fee for applications for new licenses and for renewals is set through a resolution by council. That section has been previously amended by council to state that that fee will not exceed $2,000. So on the 27th, you'll have a resolution before you to establish the fee.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to move to amend the motion to add, to remove section 31.05, section D, that removes the requirement that there be a 500-foot setback from a housing facility owned by a public housing authority.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Dickey and seconded by Councillor Tessler to amend the amended ordinance motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
To include this. The reason why I am making this motion is because this one really bothers me. Only because I know that at least in my ward, there's a situation where there's a dispensary that's within 500 feet of it's across a busy street of one of our SHA housing properties. But what really bothers me about that is near that dispensary, there's a strip club, there's an adult bookstore, and that have been problematic over the years. We can do nothing, and we have no way to deal with those other than our just regular, police channels and that kind of thing. And so it bothers me that we have these businesses that, and I know that several years ago, there was an effort to say, hey, this is a residential neighborhood, not the dispensary, we don't want these other businesses, it's, kids live here, that kind of thing. This is not anything that we've been able to address. So it bothers me that we would exclude a business that hasn't had any problems and created any issues, yet we let these other businesses that have, over time created some problems in the neighborhood. So that's why I'm asking that we remove this.
Councillor Benars.
I'm going to support the motion. It was a point when we were first discussing this, and we went from 1,000 foot to 500 foot. And at that point, we were still roughing out the edges. The claim was, or the issue is this may be in conflict with federal law relative to the benefits that we get on those federal, the subsidized housing. But I will still support it. It just seems reasonable that if you're going to not have the restrictions to residential zone in general, why does Salem Housing Authority become a special case where you say, well, I'm going to exclude it up to 500 or even 1,000 feet? So I am going to support the motion.
Okay. Were there other comments? Councillor Clem.
Yes, could staff speak to maybe city attorney speak to the potential problem downstream if, in fact, we remove this? And I'm also curious what section needs removed. I didn't get.
The proposed amendment would amend section 31085 B3D and would delete that section. As we talked about previously, the housing authority setback of 1,000 feet is part of the drug-free school zone federal law.
Okay.
And our recommendation is to be consistent with that regulation so that in the event that these dispensaries are subject to federal Controlled Substance Act enforcement, we wouldn't be licensing an activity that the US DOJ has indicated that they will prosecute.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I can't support the amendment. I don't want to run afoul. Over time, maybe it makes sense, but for right now, I want to err on the side of caution, so I won't be supporting the amendment.
Were there further counselor comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I believe the motion is the one that was amended by Counselor Dickey.
You need to vote on the amendment.
First, on the first amendment?
On
On
Councilor
her,
Dickey's
that's what
amendment.
we're going to do. I think, right?
I hope so.
I hope so. And the motion was made by Counselor Dickey and seconded by Counselor Benars? Was that right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Seconded by Counselor Tesler. All right. That's the motion on the floor. Could we have a repeat of that motion, please, Counselor Dickey?
Yes, I move to amend the original motion to remove section 31085B3D that requires a setback of 500 feet from a housing facility owned by a public housing authority.
Everybody understand the motion? Yep. All right. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those not signify by saying nay. Nay.
Nay.
Okay, the nays are Nanke, Clausen, Clem, and Peterson. All right. Motion passes. Thank you. We have a third item for second reading. Would the recorder please introduce?
no,
A second.
wait.
No.
Sorry.
Wait.
Chuck's motion.
Oh, we have to go back to Chuck's motion. Sorry. All
No,
right.
that's okay.
Counselor Bennett, you have a motion on the floor.
I
Would
do.
you like to repeat your motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I made a motion to amend the SRC to add the following definition of public park. All parkland designated in the Salem Parks Master Plan that is open to the public, and proceed to second reading.
Thank you. That motion was made by Counselor Bennett and seconded by Counselor Clem, as I remember. All right, and I just saw Counselor Nanke's hand up.
Thank you. I'd just like to explain my vote prior to doing a roll call on that.
Okay.
I'd asked staff to send me my oath of office last week, and in it I swear and affirm to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America and the state of Oregon and city ordinances. That's not an or, and at the front end of our staff report, marijuana is illegal from the federal end, so I cannot, in good conscience, from what I perceive, violate my oath. So I will be registering a no vote during the roll call.
Okay, thank you. And now, just for my clarification, City Attorney, so we have passed the motion that Counselor Dickey presented, but now we're going to vote on the actual ordinance. Is that correct?
That's correct. Councilor Dickey's motion simply amended Councilor Bennett's motion, and so now you're voting on the main motion.
And the main motion as amended then by both of them, right?
Well, the main motion as amended by Dickey. So the main motion includes Councilor Bennett's motion.
Right, and Counselor Bennett's motion amends the ordinance
Correct, and proceeds to second reading.
and proceeds to second reading, correct. Okay, all right, then we will ask the city, oh, excuse me, Counselor Rogers.
I just like to, I won't make a motion, I just want clarification.
Okay,
When we go to second reading, we'll have another opportunity to vote. And at what time will we have the fee schedule? Will that
That will come to you on October 27th.
same time?
So,
Okay,
at the same time, bother me, because this is second reading right now, so you're passing the ordinance right now. On the 27th, the date this becomes effective, you'll be passing a resolution adopting the fee.
okay. I have one more question. If, when this, let's see, when a clinic makes application, who's going to follow up on the requirements, that they meet the requirements that we set here? Who's going to follow that up in the city?
Well, planning will be looking at it from a location, and then some of the issues the police department will be looking at.
Okay, without these fees, is that where the fee will come in? So today, if a land use issue comes in, they have a fee for
Right.
land use. Is that what we're going to have next week or 2 weeks from now?
When there's, I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to find out what the process is. We have an item here that says not to exceed $2,000.
Right.
And I'm just asking if somebody comes in and applies to open a dispensary, what are they going to walk through to get to the end of the day to open up their
To our permit center.
the permit center?
Uh-huh.
And that would be based on on these fees that we come up with?
Yeah.
Okay, with the fees not to exceed $2,000, will that have a permit fee in it as well as a follow-up? Or is it just going to be a flat number?
It's not before you yet, but the way we're drafting it is there'll be an application fee of approximately $500 and then a registration or license fee of $1,500. So if someone applies for the license and gets denied, the registration fee obviously will be refunded.
Okay, here's where I have to put on the table where I'm at too. Constitutionally, you really got me on that one tonight, but I'll assume they're going to watch us over us. But here's where I'm at. I'll be very blunt. I do not see treating these folks as a clinic as any other business in our community. I see it as if we have rules they have to follow, that requires some effort on the city to see that they are meeting all the requirements. Certainly you have to pay that just like any other building permit or land use issue or anything. But to put a tax on top of that, I'm just not there. And I just want to make sure that's clear, because when I'm looking at this report, I feel like I'm voting for something that I'm not in favor of. And so if the fee schedules is what the issue I have, and that's coming next time, then that's where I'll make my voice heard. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's right.
Am I on the right page?
That's
So,
right. You are.
Counselor, you understand that the tax is a separate ordinance from this regulation?
The tax is not the same thing as the fee.
No, I don't understand that.
Okay, so we have two different ordinances. There was a first reading of an ordinance to establish a gross receipts tax on the sale of marijuana. That is a whole separate issue than the regulation. And it's a whole separate issue than the fee we would charge to get your license. So on the 27th, you're going to have a resolution to establish a fee for application for a license.
Okay.
That's separate from the tax.
So between now and then, you'll make sure I understand
You bet.
everything, correct? So I vote to my conscience as I explained them tonight. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Counselor Tesler.
I think Councilor Rogers and I were in the same boat. I want to make it real clear that I do not support any type of fee at this point. So, I mean, I hope that I am not voting for a fee tonight. I'm voting not to have a tax on medical marijuana. Is that correct?
No.
No. That was the last.
No. This one is just for the fee, not for a tax. We haven't voted regarding a tax at this point.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Sort of, yeah.
All right.
Let me try.
Counselor Bennett?
Thank you. This has a cap on a potential fee that will come up on the 27th. It cannot be higher than $2,000. It can be zero. It can be between 0 and 2. Well, you could pay them, I guess, to open a dispensary too if you want to. But, well, I know. But that's a separate issue. And this is just an opportunity. This is kind of the regulations and the setbacks and all that stuff, okay? I mean, and so you're not voting tonight on a $2,000 fee. You're also not voting on a tax. You agreed to take it out of it for second reading on medical marijuana. That's a whole separate track underway. And that's why it's so confusing. This stuff is there's 3 pieces of legislation here, and they're kind of happening at different times, but they keep crossing each other. So, but this is now a pretty clean proposal. It's as clean as we can get it at this point. Does that make sense?
In 8.1B, you voted not to tax medical marijuana. So you've already made that motion.
Right.
So now or that vote, on this one, it's with the ordinance, with the fee to come later.
For licensing.
Yeah, for licensing.
Is that, are you agreeing?
I'm afraid to say anything, but yes.
Okay, good. That'd be the first time. No, the other one I'm concerned about, since nobody's going to ask about it, I'm going to, before we vote, is what if they're denied? Is there an appeal process built into the, can they appeal somehow to somebody?
Yes, the ordinance establishes a process through Chapter 20J, our Administrative Procedures Ordinance, which would go to the hearings officer if the staff were to deny a license application.
Can I, if one of my, let's say one tries to be open or stay open or get open in my ward, can I call that up? Is there any point at which I can bring that to the council to discuss how it fits into the scheme of things?
You could discuss it at any time, but it wouldn't be a council call-up. The council, as the ordinance is proposed, similar to all our other licenses, doesn't have the authority to call up a taxi cab license or a junk dealer license.
How do we get taxi? We voted on a taxi cab one.
The ordinance was changed about 9 months ago.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Boy, there's a lot of relief. Okay. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Clausen had his hand up a moment ago.
Okay.
You okay? All right. There is a motion on the floor. Councillor Bennett, would you like to repeat your motion,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
I move to amend the proposed SRC to add the following definition of public park. All parkland designated in the Salem Park System Master Plan that is open to the public, and proceed to second reading.
Thank you. And it was seconded by Councillor Clem. All right. Any further discussion? Councillor Nanke?
With the amendment from Councillor Dickey,
Correct.
as far as the actual motion that's on the floor. That's amended.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. With one no vote, Councillor Nanke. Thank you. We have so few of those that it's hard for me to remember how I'm supposed to state that. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the second reading, the second reading, ordinance bill number 1814. Would the recorder please call for a roll call vote?
And read the title first.
You do need to read it first. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Engrossed ordinance bill number 1714 relating to the licensing and regulation of medical marijuana facilities and creating new provisions and declaring an emergency.
So this is the roll call vote on 8.2A.
Yes. And so Councillor Tesler? Aye. Councillor Nanke?
Nay.
Councillor Clausen?
Aye.
Councillor Dickey?
Aye.
Councillor Rogers?
Aye.
Councillor Benars?
Aye.
Councillor Clem?
Aye.
Councillor Bennett?
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson?
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Then we move to ordinance bill number 1814. And would the recorder please introduce that?
Ordinance bill number 1814 relating to the Broadway High Street overlay zones and off-street parking, amending SRC 613-020, 614-020, 615-020, and 806-010.
Thank you.
And Councillor Nanke?
Aye.
Councillor Clausen?
Aye.
Councillor Dickey?
Aye.
Councillor...
Aye.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Benars?
Yes.
Councillor Clem?
Aye.
Councillor Bennett?
Aye.
Councillor Tesler?
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson?
Aye. Ordinance passes. Thank you. And then 8.2C, engrossed ordinance bill number 1914. Would the recorder please introduce that?
Engrossed ordinance bill number 1914 relating to the Riverfront Overlay Zone, amending SRC 617015 and 617020. Counselor Clausen?
Aye.
Counselor Dickey?
Aye.
Counselor Rogers?
Aye.
Counselor Benars?
Aye.
Counselor Clem?
Aye.
Counselor Bennett?
Aye.
Counselor Tessler?
Aye.
Counselor Nanki?
Aye.
And Mayor Peterson?
Aye. Thank you. Ordinance passes. We will now move to public comment, and we have two individuals that have signed up this evening, Ron Sturba and Evan White. You each have 3 minutes, as you know, and when the amber light goes on, 1 minute is left. When the red light goes on, you're done. Welcome.
Welcome. Ron Sturba, 520th Street Northeast, here in Salem. Welcome, Madam Mayor, staff, counselors, and guests. I'm here to say a special thanks to all of you. There's going to be a change of counselors. I want to say thanks to the ones who have put forth and challenged arguments, disagreements, had victories and compromises, and these should never overshadow the volunteer work and the dedication to our city here in Salem. So at this time, I'd like to offer personal thanks to each one of the counselors for the work that they have done and continue to do for our community. And I ask you all to join me in applause for these counselors. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you. We appreciate the fact that you have so often come and testified and been a part of the public policies making in this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Evan White, welcome.
Just one comment, Ron, it's not
Yes.
December 31st yet. He wants me out now.
Welcome, Mr. White. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. My name is Evan White, and I live in Ward 7. Good evening, Madam Mayor and councilors, and thank you for your service. Special thanks to Councilors Tessler, Clausen, Clem, and Rogers, who will soon be leaving council. This is my Hail Mary pass to you. I recently attended a meeting of the Southwest Association of Neighbors and listened to a 40-minute presentation on the city's landslide policy. The city has a well-intentioned but ineffective policy with big holes in the net. Several neighbors mentioned the Ozo landslide in Washington, which occurred with no warning, killing 43 people and destroying dozens of homes. A report has just been published, and I'm giving you one page from that report. As you can see, much of the surrounding area was gently sloping, with only a small portion having slopes greater than 50% or 2 horizontal to 1 vertical. We also discussed the 1996 South Salem landslide, which destroyed 5 homes having a value of $1.1 million, which resulted in a legal settlement of $600,000, to which the city of Salem contributed $225,000. One of the witnesses in the lawsuit, Dr. Dareth Cornforth, has explained why clay slopes lose strength with the passage of time. Several years ago, I made a public records request and asked to see all geotechnical reports received by the city over a 2-year period. City staff responded that they would charge me $2,000, so I changed and asked for just one representative report. In this one report, Carlson Geotechnical recommended that the contractor not excavate a slope greater than 50%. Here in Salem, we have a grading ordinance which protects only city property from unsafe excavations. Many Salem residents have invested the major portion of their life savings into their home. I don't know of any other city that has an ordinance that protects only city property and not homeowner property. I've previously given council a copy of Appendix J of the Oregon Structural Specialty Code, which has been adopted by the city of Corvallis. Tonight, I'm giving you a copy of the Portland Grading Code. Please don't wait for a tragedy, and give city staff the tools it needs to do a good job for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of Mr. White? Councillor Clem.
Yes, Evan, thank you for bringing this up. I brought it up too when we had a couple of developments that were just built on sheer hillsides. The disagreement in the geotechnical and in the engineering community, which caused me to lose my fight, was that you can build yourself past the 50% slope. You can design, you can construct, you can put in the right concrete to overcome that. Was that represented in the meeting that you were in, or is your research found that the engineers have stopped disagreeing on that?
Well, my understanding is there's a great deal of agreement within the community on certain aspects. They have slope stability models, computer models. You can drill into the soil, take soil samples, analyze it, and run it through the computer and come up with a quantitative estimate of what's safe. That costs, I understand, about $10,000. But normally it's not necessary to do that unless you want to go to a slope greater than 50%, or there's some unique soil type. Like the landslide that occurred in Terwilliger. You probably remember this, the picture of the lady in the house sliding down the hill while she was in the house. That has a special type of soil. I think it's called LOESS, and I won't try and pronounce it.
Well, this is an issue, particularly in the hillier parts of Salem, but it prevents us from building some safety improvements on Highway 22, and that's state land. And then there was a landslide in West Salem a number of years ago off of Brush College Road. So I'll take a look and see if what. I only have 2 months left. So.
Were there other councillor questions for Mr. White? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony this evening. Thank you. All right. Under new business, we have no mayor's items, but we do have a councillor's item. Councillor Dickey, you have a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to direct staff to prepare ordinance changes to make all city-owned properties smoke-free.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Dickey and seconded by Councillor Tessler. Councillor Dickey, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. A few years ago, I brought a proposal to make our city parks smoke-free, or tobacco-free or smoke-free. Let me explain why I am bringing this back, and if you pass this motion tonight, we can have lots of discussion about it when staff brings an ordinance back. But since, in the 3 years since we discussed this first, there have been many new and emerging tobacco products on the market. So in addition to the risks of secondhand smoke exposure that would be both to City of Salem employees and the general public, some of these new products, such as electronic cigarettes or vaping devices, have the potential for the user to consume marijuana or other substances and would be difficult or nearly impossible to distinguish from a tobacco product by sight or odor. In addition, there are currently no state or federal restrictions on youth using electronic cigarettes or vaping products, meaning youth could be in our parks using THC in a electronic cigarette, and we would have no way to distinguish that between that and nicotine or any other substance they would put in there. So since the time also we last discussed this, many more cities, counties, and park districts in Oregon have passed smoke-free and tobacco-free policies, so there's a lot of examples that we can draw from. So I'd like to ask staff to prepare ordinance changes for consideration, and we can discuss the issue further.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions or comments regarding the motion? Councillor Clem.
Thank you, Councillor Dickey, for bringing this up. I will vote in support of the motion. I don't support the motion because I believe that all city-owned properties and listing all city-owned properties, and without still the problem of how do we enforce it, are going to be problematic. But I'm willing to have the discussion, so I'll support the motion. I do not support banning all city properties. When we get into how's that really going to look like, particularly with downtown properties and garages, boy, I get the smoke-free. I think it'll be scofflaw if it passes this way. But I'm happy to have the discussion again.
Other comments? All right, the motion on the floor made by Councillor Dickey and seconded by Councillor Tessler. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries with Councillor Nanke voting no. All right. We have no further business to come before the council. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor
Mayor,
Nanke, you
I
have your
meant
hand up.
to bring something up
Yes.
under councilor comments on the upfront, just to make councilors aware. An acquaintance of mine last week was downtown for an event, parked on the street at 5:35, and at 8:54 was issued a ticket because he had exceeded the 3 hours. He made it to his vehicle at 9 o'clock, 5 minutes after the citation was let, and he was the only car on the block face. So just kind of something to think about, that we're actually citing people that really aren't, yes, they're violating the 3 hour, but at the end of that 3 hour, there's no one left. So figured I'd bring it up because we have an unhappy citizen, and I'm sure we'll have more.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.